Hello, everybody. Today we are going to start with a new reading comprehension lecture. First of all, we are going to introduce the theme. The title of our theme for this week is Expressing Feelings. As you can see in the picture, it displays many different feelings that people might feel: happiness, sadness, excitement, anger, depression. All of these are feelings. Throughout the lesson, we are going to learn what is the importance of expressing our feelings. What is the importance of telling someone that we really love him? We are going to learn the importance of trying to share our feelings and emotions with others. We are going to watch the video below, which explains what is dyslexia. Throughout, of course, the lecture video also, we are going to display this video.
Take
This
a
video
moment to read the
shows what is
following.
dyslexia. And I'm going to explain briefly what is dyslexia instead of playing the video to save time. So
How was
dyslexia
that? Frustrating?
is
Slow?
a
What were those
disorder
sentences
that
about?
happens to
They're
children
actually
in
a
which they
simulation
see
of
the
the
letters
experience of
in an
dyslexia,
opposite way. It means you
designed to
can
make
see
you
the letters
decode
in the
each
correct
word.
way. They
Those with
can see the
dyslexia
letters in the
experience that
opposite way.
laborious pace
Okay,
every time they
so
read.
they do not know
When most
how
people
are the
think of
letters
dyslexia,
written,
they
or
think of
they know
seeing letters and
how the
words
letters are
backwards,
written, but they
like
do not
seeing
know
B as
how
D
to
and vice
pronounce
versa.
them because they
Or they
see
might
them
think
in a
people with
different way.
dyslexia see saw as was. The truth is, people with dyslexia see things the same way as everyone else. Dyslexia is caused by a phonological processing problem, meaning people affected by it have trouble not with seeing language, but with manipulating it. For example, if you heard the word cat and then someone asked you, remove the C, what word would you have left? At. This can be difficult for those with dyslexia. Given a word in isolation like fantastic, students with dyslexia need to break the word into parts to read it. Fan, tas, tick. Time spent decoding makes it hard to keep up with peers and gain sufficient comprehension. Spelling words phonetically like STIK for stick and FRENS for friends is also common. These difficulties are more widespread and varied than commonly imagined. Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language. Neurodiversity is the idea that because all our brains show differences in structure and function, we shouldn't be so quick to label every deviation from the norm as a pathological disorder, or dismiss people living with these variations as defective. People with neurobiological variations like dyslexia, including such creative and inventive individuals as Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, and Cher, clearly have every capacity to be brilliant and successful in life. So here's the special way the brains of those with dyslexia work. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is generally in charge of language and ultimately reading, while the right typically handles spatial activities. fMRI studies have found that the brains of those with dyslexia rely more on the right hemisphere and frontal lobe than the brains of those without it. This means when they read a word, it takes a longer trip through their brain and can get delayed in the frontal lobe. Because of this neurobiological glitch, they read with more difficulty. But those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading. With an intensive multisensory intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules, the brains of those with dyslexia begin using the left hemisphere more efficiently while reading, and their reading improves. The intervention works because it locates dyslexia appropriately, as a functional variation in the brain, which naturally shows all sorts of variations from one person to another. Neurodiversity emphasizes this spectrum of brain function in all humans and suggests that to better understand the perspectives of those around us, we should try to not only see the world through their eyes, but understand it through their brains.
The genre of our lesson for this week is a personal narrative. It's the first personal narrative text we are going to have for this year. Of course, you know that narrative is when we narrate, when we tell a story. And personal narrative is when you tell a story of your own, personal, something related to you. How is a personal narrative story organized? The structure is based on the passage of time and sequence of events, usually chronological. Of course, narrative text or narrative story, it means it is based on sequence of events that are taking place chronologically, يعني in order. What is the purpose of a personal narrative? To entertain the reader and tell about an event or series of events. What forms can a personal narrative be in? You can find a personal narrative in a form of a diary, in a form of autobiography when someone writes a biography about himself, in a form of a newspaper article, biographical sketch, story, picture book, and blog article. What are the key features of a personal narrative? Of course, you know that every genre has certain features in which they tell you that this is the genre of the text. It tells a true story. As I said, these features tell what are the elements of a personal narrative. The personal narrative tells a true story of the writer's life. It means a story that really happened with this person. It uses I and me. Why does it use I and me? Because it's told from the first point of view. I, me, happened with me. I did this, I did that. I experienced this, I experienced that. This is something personal. He is telling a story about himself. So that's why he is using these pronouns. It expresses the writer's thoughts and feelings. So a personal narrative also expresses the writer's thoughts and feelings, how the writer thinks, the way the writer feels, and so on. It develops the experience with narrative techniques such as a dialogue and description. Of course, in a personal narrative, you might have a dialogue. It means a conversation between the characters of the story, and description maybe of the place, of the setting, of the feelings, of the people that are sharing the story with this person. It begins with an interesting lead and gives a sense of closure at the end. So it begins with an interesting lead, an interesting idea, something that attracts the reader, that motivates the reader to read more and know more about the story. The vocabulary words. I want you to use these statements in order to find the meanings of the underlined words. You can substitute oil for butter while preparing cake. If you don't have oil, you can use butter instead. So when I say substitute, it means to use something instead of something else. A few encouraging words might provide the support to a person in need. When I encourage you, it means I am supporting you. You can connect the words encouraging and support. They are related. Embarrassing. It is very embarrassing for the broadcaster to forget his dialogue. Imagine that a broadcaster, a reporter who is on TV, millions of people can see him at the same time, and he forgot his dialogue. This is embarrassing. This is something that causes embarrassment. He feels shy. Dumb. Of course, we do not pronounce the B here, so it's dumb. Don't ask dumb questions, please. It means don't ask stupid questions, silly questions. Awful. We didn't enjoy the trip because the weather was awful. We didn't enjoy, the weather was awful. So the weather was very bad. Mourning. The workers were all mourning about the amount of work they had. If you have a very you are overloaded, you have a very big amount of work that you have to do, so you moan, you complain. Okay? These are the meanings of the word. Substitute to use someone or something instead of another person or thing. Encouraging, making someone feel more hope and confidence. Embarrassing, making you feel shy or embarrassed. Dumb, stupid or silly. Awful, very bad. Moaning, to say that something is wrong or that you are angry about something. Or instead of all this phrase, you can say just complaining. Character traits is the skill that we're going to have for this week. When we say character traits, it means we are not describing the outer appearance of a person. We are describing the inner appearance or the inside of this person, his behavior, his attitude, his personality. So the character traits is when we describe a person's behavior and attitudes and personality. So we use adjectives that are suitable to describe this person based on his actions, on his thoughts, on his feelings, throughout the story. Of course, we took the adjectives lesson last week, and I will going also to show you now in the chart some positive and negative traits. As you can see here in the chart, there are some positive and negative traits that you can use in order to describe a person's traits, not his outer appearance. Okay, now we start with our lesson essential question. How does a person with learning disability feel? If a person has learning disabilities, he is disabled, he has some learning difficulties, how might this person feel? I think he might feel depressed, he might face many difficulties, he might experience emotional distress, he might feel lonely, he might have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and so on, especially if compared to someone else. So having learning disabilities is something very sensitive, and we should take into consideration the feelings of the students. That's why we are going to see now the story of the character that we are going to read about now. What happened with him? What was the learning disability that he had? On being 17, bright and unable to read, this story talks about a person who had dyslexia. No one knew that unless his teacher, one of his teacher who discovered that he is suffering from dyslexia, she knew, and he confessed to her that he cannot read because he had dyslexia. He was in the 4th grade, and this teacher was very motivational, was very encouraging, and she helped him to the maximum in order to overcome this learning disability. Of course, at the end of the story, we're going to see what happened to him. He improved, he became a better person. But throughout the story, we are going to discuss the struggles that he passed through, the embarrassing moments that he had, the bullying that he was facing, and so on. Okay, these are some exercises. Of course, you can find the answers in the slide after. Referring to the text, you are going to solve these exercises throughout the live sessions, apart from the worksheet that you are going to have, and it's going to have also many questions related to the text. Here are also some questions, and here there are the answers of all the questions that have